Hello and welcome to this webinar in association with Lensbaby. I'm Angela Nicholson. I'm the founder of She Clicks and I'm the co-founder of Camera Jabber, which is a website for photographers with news, reviews, tips and techniques. Today, I'm joined by Stephen Neeson, who is an award-winning wedding photographer based in Northern Ireland. Hi, Stephen. How are you?
Hello, Angela. I'm very good. Thank you. Thanks so much for having me on.
Oh, it's lovely to see you.
Yeah, you too.
Thank you. So I know you've been very, very busy recently because obviously the world of wedding photography is reinvigorated after such a quiet, 18 months, 2 years. It's been a terrible time, but I imagine you're very, very busy now.
Yeah, so last year obviously was a bit of a wipeout as such. So this year just hit us up the face with a bang. June time it started getting busy and I literally haven't stopped since. Which is really good. It's great to be busy again. It's great to get back out and do what we love doing again, albeit slightly stressful.
So perhaps we could get started by you telling us a little bit about how you got into photography, a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, so I had a career before photography. I used to actually work in a bus factory. So I was a coach builder by trade, and I'd done that for about 11 years. And I went through a stage, of my life. I was looking for something to do at the weekends, and I thought I would take up some sort of a hobby, and that's really what got me searching as such. And I did appreciate imagery, and it was just more of a choice one time. Well, there's photography that might keep me indoors or away from the partying lifestyle that I used to have. And I randomly chose photography and just got more and more interested in viewing photographs, and that ultimately led me into it. But to be honest, it was, as most people first do, you start taking pictures of landscapes and things. So it took me quite a long time to make it a career as such. I actually took to photography quite quickly in terms of like falling sort of for it. So it was good that way. But for some reason I took a notion of studying and I left my job and ended up doing a degree in photography in 2009. And which was really, really good. It was fantastic. But I always wanted to be a fashion photographer in those years, and really that didn't happen. I moved over to England, then met my wife, moved back again, and I kind of stumbled across wedding photography. It stumbled across me, and I've been full-time wedding photographer now for 9-10 years. So yeah. That was really the introduction to it.
And what is it about wedding photography that pulled you in? What's the attraction for you?
So at the beginning, I'm not going to lie, it was purely financial, because whenever I moved back over to here in 2011, I was getting married, and a couple of people had asked me to shoot their weddings, and I had got a small amount of money for it. But really, I wanted to make a living elsewhere. And I suppose it kind of just happened. It fell at my feet in a way, and I realized, I can make a career out of this. So it was a decision based really on that. So I can't say I enjoyed it at the beginning. Yes, I did. I found it quite stressful, and it was very hard to learn it. But as time went on, I just realize, like, now I'm a wedding photographer. I will always be excuse me, I will always be a wedding photographer, and it takes time, I think, to sort of nurture yourself into wedding photography. But it's such a good career. It has lots of challenges, but I'm so glad I'm in it now.
And obviously, I introduced you. You're an award-winning wedding photographer, so you're obviously a photographer who stands out from the crowd. How have you gone about doing that?
Well, first off, I made a decision, 10, 12 years ago, whenever I was starting to take pictures, I made a decision that every single shoot that I do, I'm going to try and make myself better. And that seems quite simple, but I still live by that. every wedding that I go out on, I try my best to do something different and to progress, one step further than I was before. And I know it's such small steps, but if you pick it up over a year or 2 years, then you obviously can see yourself progressing. But, for me, being different is very, very important, because especially in having a business, because if you just look exactly the same as everybody else, then it's going to be very hard to differentiate. So I have purposely, stepped out and tried to I kind of fell into producing images that were fashion-like, because of the background of where I wanted to be. And that made me start to try and use different tools. I have always used off-camera flash. That started happening just as soon as I got into photography. So yeah, I just have really always tried to see things differently with my eye, but then try and produce things that are slightly different. Not only just that they're different, but they really appeal to me. And everyday images just doesn't really appeal to me that much. But I suppose maybe now's a good time for me to share a couple of images and show you what the style of photography that I put out there.
That'd be great. Yes, please.
Yeah, so I've got a few images here. So maybe if I can share a few of them and then maybe talk about those. So yeah, as I mentioned a wee while ago there, I actually use flash quite a lot, and this off-camera flash to me was always just a tool and to try and make something different, really. And after using it, the first few years I did use it, it's such a stressful thing to get the hold of, to get a grip of, because it's not the easiest thing to use. And as time went on, I really started pushing myself trying to be slightly more creative with it. And that's exactly what I've done here, is trying to create shadows and stuff with flash. So I use flash in many different ways, and I suppose that's what I would probably not. My couples don't know that I'm known for flash. They just know that I've got a distinctive style as such, and most of them say that to me. But really, it's the flash and different tools that I'm using that are doing that. So you can see.
Sorry, Stephen, just to jump back to that image that you just showed, that one there. I mean, that is a beautiful image, but I think to the untrained eye, a non-photographer would look at that and just think it's a natural image, whereas a photographer will know immediately, because the sun is behind them. There must be some illumination falling on their faces because they're lit. But it looks like you've purposely gone out to go for a natural look.
Yep. Absolutely.
Does that define your style? Is that what you do routinely, or do you sometimes use more extreme flash?
Yeah, I try not to use extreme flash so much. I obviously do sometimes. Sometimes it works, but really when I'm using it, I'm trying to fill in and trying to make it look natural. Even though to our trained eyes, we know it's not really natural looking there, but I do see a lot of flash that's overused, and don't get me wrong, I do that sometimes and it is unnatural, but that's my sole purpose when I'm using flash. It's just to fill in enough to make it look natural. And obviously colors are very important too whenever you start using flash, so sometimes you have to use gels and things, but there's certain times of the day where it's perfect to use flash, especially at sunset. And it just means you can have an overall well exposed image, rather than like, for example, on that photo shoot that I was doing here, this was actually an elopement that I done. So whenever we were doing the shoot, I done shots with flash and without, and just 5 minutes after this I was shooting without flash, and like the background's quite washed out, but like these are my favorite ones.
I think that's an important point, actually, because some people forget that flash isn't always about illuminating the subject, or that is what it does, but it allows you to darken the background and pull out more color from the sky. And because it actually, the sun is actually relatively high in the sky there, but it looks a little bit darker than that, doesn't it?
That's right. That's right. So, yeah, and really that's all I'm doing. So when I'm using the fill-in flash, I would generally, it depends on the time of day and the time of day and what type of day it is, how sunny it is or how cloudy it is. But generally, I'm, stopping the background of the sky down 1 to 3 stops, anywhere between 1 and 3 stops. But the likes of this here, I'm probably down 1.5 or 2 stops, and you just need enough flash coming in there that gives you a nice overall exposure. So you do.
So would you actually take a test shot, say, at your ambient settings with, say, two stops down without flash, and then use the flash?
Absolutely. That's what I do every time. I still do it now. So like I shoot, there's different ways that I shoot in camera, but generally I only need to take one shot to get the background exposure, and one other shot with a bit of flash to make sure I'm getting the right amount of flash on the subject. Sometimes maybe you need to do that a couple of times, but yeah, it's a fairly easy process once you wrap your head around it. At the beginning, it's a bit daunting, and you just feel that you can end up firing off far too many shots and not getting good results. But it's actually a very simple process once you start, and you can get fairly consistent results.
I know quite a few photographers who are like early on in their careers, they always feel a bit nervous about taking those test shots. But I always say to them, well, surely if you just go in and take the shot, the subjects, they assume that it's kind of like all happening in camera and it's all automated. But at least if you do some test shots, it looks like you're considering something and making changes and, having your input.
That's right, absolutely. I mean, I remember at the beginning, I used to try and I used to set the shot up, and I think it was through nerves. I would just have been firing shots off, and even knowing that they weren't good. I would just been nervous in front of the bride or groom or whoever it was, just not really knowing what I was doing, to be honest. But yeah, but nerves. The funny thing is, like on a wedding day, you have to be prepared. It's a mindset game, really, in a wedding, because you haven't time to think, you haven't time to ask people to wait, and you really need to know what you're doing with your equipment, no matter what it is. So you have to be so fast, and that can only come with experience, and it can only come with trying things. So, and a wee bit of trial and error as well. So, yeah. So like, it's not like I don't use flash all the time on weddings. It's a number of shots per wedding. And again, every wedding's different. Sometimes I shoot like throughout the whole day with flash, and other times I don't. It just depends. And it depends on the couple as well. It really does. There's so many different factors. Sometimes time just does not allow me to be as creative as I want to be. If you understand.
Yeah, sure.
That's it. So this isn't flash, actually. I've just used an LED, but it's exactly the same idea. It's underexposing slightly for the background, and this is the chandelier. So I'm underexposing, simply just not to wash out or blow out the chandelier in the background. As you can see, this is Christmas time from the holly and the lights at the bottom. So this is quite a nice hotel here in Northern Ireland, but to be honest, it's a very dark hotel. So it wouldn't be the easiest place to get nice photographs, even though to the eye it's a very beautiful place. And this is just quite a simple shot, filling in with a wee bit of LED.
I imagine that without your use of flash there, it would be quite a harsh shot, and you'd lose. I mean, what you've done there is create atmosphere with your flash.
That's right. And like without the fill light, the bride and groom would be in an absolute silhouette. So they would, but to me, wedding photography is all about getting the right moment, using the right light with the right couple. And yeah, there's so many different elements that have to come together at the right time. And it's like part of our job is really assessing what works where and with who. Like this couple here was, I could have put any type of light onto them, to be honest, and they just kind of soaked it up as such. They were very enjoyable to work with, you know. But yeah, that's just a wee bit of LED. And
we have a question from Luke asking what continuous lights are you using. So you said that was an LED, so that's a continuous light.
Yeah, so I have quite I don't know the model. It's a Photox LED light. I've got two of them actually. I've got a Photox one, which is probably about 10 inches by about 6 inches, or maybe slightly smaller. It's like a letterbox style light, LED. So I use that as an LED. I've also got another one which I couldn't even tell you what brand it is. I bought it off Amazon one time, and it was like, it just, sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And I know, and like it's not really a good job. But this one here, I use it quite a lot, and it's like my old faithful. Do you know what I mean? So it's really good and quite even light. So that's yeah.
And what about flash? What flashlights do you use?
Again, like I've actually used the same light for a lot of years now. So that my main flashlight that I use is a Photox one. So it is. To be honest, I need new flash gear, so I do, and it's something that I need to invest in pretty soon. I was a Photox ambassador for years, and I've had that stuff now since 2015, but it's at the end of its life, to be honest. So I do. That's one thing I need to do. I probably won't do it straight away here, but I need new flash stuff. You know.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't really want to buy new stuff like that mid-season, do you?
No, you know, it's kind of working for me right now. I'll wait until like a wee bit of downtime and experiment and look out there. See, because of the whole pandemic, I kind of feel slightly away from everything right now, and I couldn't even tell you what's out there, you know. So it's just, I don't know, you know, it has to be light. I know that. I need to be able to put it into a bag and carry it around, because I don't work with a second shooter or with an assistant or anything. So I need to use quite small stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So we'll see how we go on. So yeah, this isn't a wedding image actually. It's supposed to be in later on. So I have a number of. This was really the start of me using the Lensbaby Omni system. So I got it over lockdown last year and practiced it on my kids. And you see, to be honest, it's not something I go out without now. It's something that I have on my camera. I've actually got it on my 35mm lens all the time. So yeah, it's just a great wee lens for creating effect, or a great wee adapters for creating effects. And years ago, whenever I used to have what do you call it, a prism in my camera bag, and I actually the amount of times I put my hand in and I actually cut my finger twice, I think, and because there was a wee chip out the end of it. It was so big and it was heavy, and I just sometimes used it and sometimes I don't. And whenever I came across this system, I was like, is this really going to be that good? Because it's so small.
Yeah.
And this was me testing it at home over the lockdown last year, and I ended up getting some good wee shots. So that's
so I think a lot of people are familiar with Lensbaby for their creative lenses, but some people may not know what Omni is. Omni Creative Filter System. Perhaps you could just give a little description or explanation of what it is and how it works.
Yeah, so the filter, it's a filter system. So essentially it screws, there's a ring that screws onto your lens. You get different sized ones for different lenses. And then you have what's called wands, which actually come onto they have like magnets on them, so they stick onto the end of the filter system, and you can put them in front of the lens to create effects. There's multiple different ones, like there's a couple that I use the most, and that would be there's like a rainbow wand, and also like a mirrored one, which you can see here, which is good for getting reflections. And the reason why it interested me so much was, well, there's a few different reasons. I used to love shooting into flash while distorting the lens, putting things in front of the lens, and it was never that easy to do because you had to carry things around with you. Like, I used to see the most random stuff in my camera bag, like plastic bottles, or I used to carry a pair of glasses like with me to try and use that, just all these different things. And I bought crystals and all these loads of things and kept it. But now, like, the system just stays in the back of my bag in terms of all the wee ones, and I keep the filter, the screen filter on the end of the lens, and you can get some really good results. So for me, it was really for use with flash, but also to try and make my pictures that wee bit more interesting was another reason. But also sometimes as wedding photographers, you go into places and it's not always like pretty backgrounds and things. So it's a really good way of actually distorting backgrounds and making things look slightly more interesting. So yeah, like, as I say, I use it a lot now, and I don't use it for every picture. Don't get me wrong. It's for me, wedding photography, you have to get the sort of basic stuff out of the way first, and then be creative. So the good thing about the Omni system is you can move the wand off the front of the camera and just leave it there. It's stuck on with a magnet. So whenever I do want to use it, I just swipe it in front of the lens and play about a wee bit. But that's it. Those are just two wee shots I was using over lockdown. And a perfect example here of going into a house somewhere and having to sort of adapt. And this was, I hadn't a lot of room, and there's loads of people around the place, around the house, and rather than like taking things off to somewhere else, it's so easy. Just like, if you've seen where that was, it's just on top of a bed with light coming in behind it, and I used the two wands, one at the top, one at the bottom, and you just start what's the negative space around subject, and also create a flare and a nice effect. So it's just it does the job, and you can just do it so quickly.
It does make a more magical image there, doesn't it? Because you imagine if that was just a straight shot, you'd see instantly, oh, there's a pair of shoes on a bed.
Yeah.
You've created something a lot more interesting.
Yeah, well,
we've got a couple of questions coming in, Stephen. I just want to remind people, if they have any questions, then please type them as comments below the video, and we'll endeavour to answer them. So it's a good point. Somebody has just asked, John Paul, saying, what white balance do you generally use, or does it change between environments? And I think, the difference between the last few images show how things can change.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm a wee bit of a weird shooter, I suppose. I change my settings quite a lot. So like inside a church, I use mostly manual settings, whereas whenever I'm outside, I use like aperture priority on my camera, and also most of the day I use automatic white balance. And I say most of the day. It's so good and so consistent. I can use it most of the time and auto white balance. But if I'm using flash, sometimes I'll use, it depends on the situation, how I change it. But generally, if I'm using flash, I'll set the white balance myself. And especially if I'm using colors, gels and stuff. But a good lot of the day I use auto white balance. And the cameras like nowadays are just so good. So there's no worries there.
Yeah.
You
So you've
know?
got a nice rainbow effect going on the right hand side of that image. That created by the Omni, or is that from the window?
No, that's the Omni, and the rainbow one is very good for doing that. And like it's it's like using Flash. Whenever you get attachments like this, you think I'm going to use this in the wedding. You actually have to practice with them, because it's having taken your head away from what you normally do is like it can be stressful in a wedding. So playing around with things, it's just for me, I just need to be in the flow and a rhythm of shooting. And I had to practice with this, but now I know that I put the wand on the opposite side of the lens to where the light's coming in, and put it over the lens. And that's I suppose like something I just had to work out for myself. You know, it might be self-explanatory to some people, but I had to sort of work that out. So yeah, so that's the rainbow one, just over the top of the lens, and it creates a really nice wee effect. This is just using the other the mirrored one, and you see, again, I'm not saying this room wasn't nice, but there's the big purple pillows behind it. There's just lots of stuff going on, and for me to make this nice and interesting shot, it was such an easy way to do it, is just put the crystal over the lens, and that's the effect you get. And you know, you can put it over as much of the lens as you want. You know, you could put it over 90% of the lens if you want to. I tend not to. I tend to sort of keep it on one side. So I do. And again, you can use this. You can use it with portraits as well. That's me using it just in a window.
So she stood on the windowsill.
Yeah.
Excellent.
I know. Yeah, to do that, I needed about 4 bridesmaids to lift her up. But yeah, and I just play around with this, and like there's a big radiator at the bottom, so that kind of covers it up a wee bit, you know.
And it does just look like a sort of a shaft of sunlight coming through and creating a rainbow, but obviously it's
that's
the
right.
Omni wand.
That's right. Yeah. And it suits it because of the colours in the background.
Yeah.
You know. Again, that's me just using two different wands, changing the image from looking like, you know, a plain image to something a bit different. And then that's me just stepping back and changing that a wee bit.
That's nice. I like your framing there as well. And then you've got the reflection of the tree above. It almost looks like a puddle, you know, a patch of water or something.
Absolutely. So what you might not notice is here I've actually used Flash.
Right.
And you can see the separation, and you can see the light coming out around the bride's arm, and the tree as well. So that that's for me. Whenever I'm shooting like this, I'll try and do as many images around one scene as possible. So rather than just take one shot and then, you know, move on, I have already set up my flash in the background, and I'll, you know, do a shot one way and then change it up a wee bit, and then I will have another one here a lot darker, and so that just so I can fill some pages, you know, whenever I'm doing the album.
Yeah. So where have you positioned the flash?
So the flash is directly behind the bride and groom. So you can't see it, obviously.
Yeah. But you're getting that sort of translucent look to her dress at the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just normally just set it in behind and try and hide it somewhere. See if it's editing things out again. And again, this is just the Omni out around the edges. Very simple, easy to use.
John Paul's asking, what's your go-to lens and your standard aperture, if you have one, for wedding photography?
So I get that this changes. So if you asked me 2 years ago, I would have said last year even. I have two lenses that I use quite a lot, and that's the 35 and the 85, or sorry, 30, 35 and 50, and then sometimes an 85. Before that, I used to shoot with the 24-70 and a 70-200, and they were like just stuck on my camera all the time, and maybe the odd time used a different lens. For the last few months, I've been all over the place with lens, so I can't actually say I've got a go-to lens. I could tell you, like, I use a 35 quite a lot. Throughout the day, and a 50. I use the 70-200 only whenever I'm in a large church or if I'm doing speeches and I need to get in closer. That's the only times I really use a larger lens. And then I use some Lensbaby lenses for creative effects as well. But like, to be honest, this all changes wedding to wedding. That's what I was saying earlier about, really getting a feel for the couple, getting a feel for the location, and getting a feel for how creative actually you can be. Because, what I've learned over the years is not every couple wants really different images. Like I have to work people out too, because honestly, I could be, if I was being as creative as I really want it to be, I probably wouldn't get enough work. And that the simple reason for that is people want their wedding photography in general, and I'm talking about over here in Northern Ireland, like in general, they want everything to be clean, crisp. They want to look beautiful. So if I was to do everything so creative that you couldn't see their faces, or it was, you had to work things out, it just doesn't really fit properly. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So Callum has asked if you could talk us through the settings on one of your shots so that you can sort of think through how you've put it together.
Yeah, so any shot in particular, do you want me to for flash or?
Just a couple of them, maybe. I mean, maybe this one and perhaps the one before.
Okay, so for here, I'll go to this one first. For here, I'm using a 35mm lens, and I'll be shooting. It's a 35mm Sony 1.8 lens, and so I will be shooting at 1.8 here. So really, that's my starting point is the aperture, and then the shutter speed is really it's irrelevant really in terms of what it was. I couldn't even tell you, but it was quite bright here, so I imagine it was probably 1,000 or more. And when I'm outside, I try and shoot as low an ISO as possible, but generally when I'm not using flash, it's the aperture which I really set first. And or if I am using flash, then it's the complete opposite way. So I rarely use high speed sync anymore. I used to. I just found it's pretty inconsistent in terms of knowing what it's going to do. Really, it's not like as if you can work an exposure out easily all the time. So I just went back a few years ago. I just went back to using standard flash again, and with the flash, I always just set the shutter speed first, so that'll be below 200th of a second, and whatever I usually shoot underexposed slightly, so it doesn't really matter to me whatever the aperture is if I'm using the flash shots. The likes of this, so this is using a Lensbaby lens. This is actually the Sol 45, which is my favorite sort of creative effect lens. And again, for settings in this, it's not like there's a bit of playing around. I'm using flash here as well, which makes it double hard to get your exposure and all set. So really for this, I'm going to be setting my shutter speed and getting the flash set up first, making sure my exposure is correct. And I'm inside here, so my exposure is sort of key, and then because with a Sol 45 and a lens, you can tilt and shift around and play with the focus. So it's really hard to actually put all this together. But whenever you do, it comes out really different, and beautiful, and quite dreamy. So
you have a sharp central area, and then kind of blur beyond.
That's right.
Around the edges. Yeah.
You can see around the edges. It's so blurred, like, but it's such a cool effect. I really love it. You know, I prefer using it with flash, to be honest. Like I do. I think that adds that added element of, you know, kind of slightly weird and crazy for wedding photography, but it gives something that's set apart. And here's the thing, I'll have to add, like, you see what I'm doing here. I used to just do random shots throughout the day with flash and with creative lenses and things. And what I've actually started doing, and I've been experimenting quite a lot over the last couple of months, and I haven't, like, honestly, I haven't nailed it yet of what I'm exactly doing, but I want to I am offering like a slightly different service within my wedding photography, in that I'll shoot a wedding exactly how I normally do, but I'll also shoot some quite dreamy and creative stuff. And rather than putting random pictures into the bride and groom's album, I'm actually offering like a fine art album now. And that album, whenever I say fine art, I know it's a very loose term and it's not used properly as such. It's using, you know, images that are out of focus, that you have to maybe stop and think about, that have the likes of this, what you see on the screen right now. It's just like an additional service, really. You know?
So that's in addition to the main album?
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, if somebody just wanted that, they could have it. But generally, as I say, people want to see themselves, you know, on their wedding day as they feel they should. And that's just, this is my way of being creative and pushing something creative at the same time, you know, having both. Yeah.
You've mentioned practicing, you know, new ideas. Matt was asking, how long do you actually sort of work on it to practice your new ideas, and then, you know, start introducing it to an actual live shoot to a wedding?
So, well, for me now, I would just practice it on my kids once or twice, and that's enough. Whereas at the beginning, you know, whenever I was first starting with flash, it was, I practiced on models lots over quite a long period of time. The first few times I tried to use flash on a wedding, it didn't work out so good. And, you know, loads of times I would have tried something and just sort of, that didn't work. So I'll forget about that. And to be honest, the same thing has happened with some of the Lensbaby lenses that I have. Like, I've brought them out and thought I'm going to do something different here, and then not been able to get it work. And I remember in one instance, it wasn't the lens, it was me interacting with the couple. I couldn't get that to work because whenever you're doing something different with a couple in terms of the creative effect lens, you have to actually pose them different and have different emotions coming, or different emotions in the image as well. So it's not even like a technical thing of trying to practice these things and get them nailed. You have to actually practice on people as well, because you have to communicate with people, and it's very hard to put together, but to me it's worth it, and practice makes perfect, and there is nothing like practicing on real couples. And like I'm pretty confident with couples nowadays. If I wanted to practice on them, I would just tell them, and I would admit it if it doesn't work and make a joke out of it. And like, I don't mind them laughing at me, so sure, it's all good.
I guess you need, like you say, you need to be confident with the technicalities if you're going to work with the people as well, because you can't be sort of just saying, just a minute, I've got to work this out. And then, you know, right, okay, you know, you've got to have everything nice and slick as far as the technique's concerned, and then to be able to direct the people, because they're the variables on the day, aren't they?
That's right, absolutely. Absolutely, and there's so many variables on a day, especially with people
Mm-hmm.
You just don't know what way they're going to react when you're taking their picture.
Yeah.
And they like people can just tell you straight to your face, you're that's too much, or I don't want to be here. You just don't know what's going to happen. So like sometimes you go in feeling so confident and like, yeah, like this is going to be an amazing shot, and they're like, can you just hurry up? I want to go to the bar, you know. And I just push it. But that happens, like, and it's just wedding photography. It's just you just have to roll with it. And there's at times where I've set up to do these things and I've had to just walk away because I knew that people weren't really interested. So yeah.
Yeah. I know you mentioned it at the beginning, but someone's asked for a reminder of how long have you actually been shooting all these different types of weddings? When did you start?
So I picked up my first camera in 2008.
Mm-hmm.
I done a wedding in 2008.
That's good going.
Or maybe it was like maybe 10 months or a year after I actually picked up my first camera. I done it with a friend, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a friend of mine's mum who had been with her partner for, I don't know, like 20, 30 years, and who had never got married and decided to get married and didn't want a photographer, but in the end said if I wanted to come and take pictures, I could. So there was zero pressure. It wasn't like I took on a job prematurely.
Mm-hmm.
It was just there was no pressure there, and
Right.
I didn't do a great job looking back, but I actually just got my foot in the door. But that was 2008. I probably done another wedding the following year, maybe 2 years later, maybe done two or three, and then to the end of 2011, when I moved back over to here, Northern Ireland, I'd done quite a few, and then we say quite a few, a number of weddings, and then 2012 really is when it
Mm-hmm.
all took off, and I think like that was the first year I was advertising myself as a wedding photographer. That's when I started my business, and I went from shooting quite low numbers in 2012 to I think 2014 or 15, I'd done over 70 weddings.
Wow.
So I took off quite quickly. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and I shot those numbers for a couple of years and then brought it back down, and now I'm back up again. So I shoot a lot of weddings.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
that's probably a really good point to ask a question that Derek asked quite early on, which was, what do you consider your best tips for promoting and growing your photography business, your wedding photography business?
Okay, so best tips, dependent on what stage you're at the beginning, I think you just need to be sensible, but be busy. Get a portfolio together. Never jump too far ahead and think you're better than you are, because it takes years and years and years to get confident with wedding photography. But in terms of tips of getting weddings, it's do as best job you can, be as nice to people as possible, and get them talking about you in a good way. And that's the best way to get weddings. And that's couples and vendors. That's the easy way for me to put it. Get them talking about you in a positive way and get them sharing your name.
So do you do much networking?
Yeah, like for especially vendors, like I tried at the beginning to network with them, but in reality, nowadays most of my friends are in the wedding business, mostly photographers.
Mm-hmm.
We network with each other and we give each other weddings and things, but it's also very important to network with other people in the business, like hotels and bridal shops and florists, because they even like I there's a celebrant, so there's celebrants out there that recommend me, and that's just from being nice to them on the day. Do you know what I see most? And this is the exact opposite of what I see and hear sometimes. This is the opposite of what you should be doing. Is like we're only photographers, and if you walk into a wedding and are bossy and just even though you might not think you're not being nice, but just some people aren't really that nice, maybe even through nerves or whatever. I don't know why it is, but people will never recommend you like that. So for me, it's not all about photography on the day, even though some people try and say it is. It's really not. For me, I have to go in and do as good a job in as little time as possible, so that at the end of it, the couple can say, do you know what? That was very stress-free, and I've got really good images, and this guy was presentable and was nice, and they'll tell their friends. And that's, like, to me, that's the best way to get weddings, and that's what's worked for me over the years. You know, and it goes a long way, so it does. Yeah.
And when you're shooting a wedding, do you stick to stills or do you shoot any video as well?
No, I just do stills. Yeah. So I mean, I do video slightly, or sorry, I do video commercially, a wee bit, not in weddings. To be honest, I would have no interest in shooting video at weddings. I really wouldn't. So yeah, I had thought about it at times, but to be honest, like, images are really where my passion lies. And I'm not very keen on editing. I try and keep my editing process as little as possible, and there's too much editing involved for video for me. So yeah, my days now are spent, I would like to be away from my computer as much as possible rather than stuck in front of it. So yeah, that's a big no for me.
Fair enough. Do you have any more images, or is this the last one?
No, I think yeah. So another important part of a wedding day for me is really capturing everything. And I just wanted to show that there's a few different lenses that I use, and especially like Lensbaby ones, and I use them for different things. This is the Velvet. I actually use that as a macro lens, and it's it comes out maybe once. Sometimes I don't use it in a wedding, but generally I'll shoot the rings with it and brooches and things like that if I have time in the morning. And that's really good for doing like close-ups and macro. And I know it's like really, you can use it for portraits and all as well, but generally that's all I use it for. And then this is again, it's just something different. Like, some people play around in Photoshop to do this sort of stuff, whereas that's just more or less straight from the camera and my preset and Lightroom on it. You know, and having the ability to change anywhere in the frame, or change where the focus is anywhere in the frame, it's so good. And like the beauty of this is that perfection, it like doesn't come into it. Like, for me, you could say, the focus point's in the wrong place or whatever. And see, whenever you're shooting like this, it's just, I don't even care. You know, it's not that I don't care. I care about the images, yes, but I don't care about the focus in this instance, because it's about an overall look and feel.
And is that the Sol 45 again?
Yeah, that's the Sol 45. I believe so. I've got a Sweet 50 as well, so that's kind of, I suppose, a similar lens. Yeah. So yeah, no, it's all good.
There's something we haven't touched on, Stephen, which I know you're quite keen on, is how you plan your day. And it kind of dovetails with a question that someone asked. I'm just struggling to see it, but they asked about whether you have go-to poses for your couple. So you say, do you go through a plan of sort of arrive at this time, get these shots, and then have these poses and then move on to this? Or are you a bit more freeform than that?
So yes, there's a certain amount of planning involved, but what I would say is, I've probably mentioned this a few times, one of the successes of wedding photography is being able to work on the fly and being able to change and adapt to different situations. And unless if you shoot weddings, you will know how many millions of scenarios there is out there that can change. But for me, the planning involved in my weddings are really time focused, and I try and plan out, get the thing going on time. I guess that's honestly most of the planning really is getting, in the morning time, being on time first of all, but also allowing allowing time to do portraits and being straight up with people of how long it's going to take. And then in the afternoon when I'm doing the couple shots now, is being really focused in the bride and groom, what they can expect, how long I need. And, so in terms of planning, that's really all I plan. Posing, I have a number of sort of go-to poses, and I think that's the key to it, is having a number of them and not trying to venture out all the time. Because at the beginning, what happens is you think you need like 30 different poses on a wedding day, but really you can get away with having 2 or 3 or 3 or 4 and adapting them very slightly. And the best thing I can tell you to do, because if you're looking at somebody's wedding images that maybe is only starting off, one of the first things, if there's something wrong in my eyes, the first thing you see is that people aren't close enough. And like for me, that's the easiest way to start posing people, is just tell them to cuddle. And at the beginning, I made the mistake of trying to direct too much, like come in close, put this hand here, and whereas if you can simply instruct somebody, make sure your hips are touching, come in nice close, right, cuddle each other. Generally, they'll feel more natural and they'll just cuddle into each other. So I do that, and then change and adapt hands as I need them, where necessary. And so it's really, it is key to plan things out, but you have to be willing to change as well. And in terms of posing, keep it quite loose and only do 2 or 3, because you just get carried away in your own mind and you end up getting annoyed with yourself because you didn't do what you planned to do. You haven't time to do what you plan to do most of the time.
Do you carry it all in your head, or do you have a notebook or a list on your phone or anything?
So yes, years ago I would have had a few things wrote out, but that would have been like make sure and get a couple shots, rings, things like that, just a general list. It wouldn't have been very specific. The only thing, it's all in my head now, the only thing that I write down is family shots. And whenever I go through with a couple before a wedding, I'll say, if you have, if you're doing family photographs, which more or less everybody does, please write me a list out. And the simple reason is, if you write me a list, I will photograph everybody on that list. And whereas if you don't, I might not know who people are and I could forget. So, but I'll also go through it with them, because if you just leave it up to people, they could write down 50 different photographs to do, and you could be there for hours. So I'll just simply say, if it was my family, I would do this: bridegroom, mum and dad, bridegroom, mum, dad, add in siblings, whatever. So I go through that with them, and then they're like, yeah, that's what we want to, and it keeps it fairly simple. So that's really that's as much planning as there is.
Right. Sounds good. Yeah. So we're coming up to 5:02, so I probably need to think about rounding it up. I don't know, is this your last image?
Yeah,
you've got some more to show us.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I mean, I think that's a really interesting. Sorry.
Did I show that?
Oh no, I don't think so.
Well, then that's the last one. That's just a wee bit of flash.
Right.
Using reflections.
And that's a nice wide shot. And we were talking earlier about lens selection, and you say you jump around a bit. I mean, obviously, what was this 35mm, or is that the 24 end of your 24-70?
To be honest, that was either 24 or possibly even wider. I have a 16-35 as well, which that could have been used with it. Generally, that lens only comes out every now and again. So, it's really only, like, that was a pool in the back garden of the bride's family home, and
lovely.
It wasn't that big a space really, but that was just a shot done at the end of the evening. As a
looking at that,
shot.
trying to wonder where your flash is, because obviously you've got a lot. It's quite a wide framing, and I can't see the flash in there.
Yeah, so the flash will just be slightly out of frame to the left. And I'll also have used a grid to focus the light. And yeah, so you can see obviously on the background, on the hedge behind them, you know, where the flash is falling. But because the flash is quite far away, I put a grid on just to keep it focused in on them, you know.
Yeah, beautiful shots, really bringing out the drama of the sky.
It is. And you know, like, if nothing else, like, you do this sort of stuff for people, then, you know, it gives them something to talk about. And whenever you share them online, because it's slightly different looking, like, is these different shots that get me more weddings, you know, from social media and that, whereas doing a good job and being nice is really the bulk of it. But to me, having a wee bit of a different style to go with it really just helps so much. And at the end of the day, you have to like what you're shooting. If you don't like the images you're shooting, there's something wrong. And I guess it's the sort of stuff really that I like. So that's
and if you start to get bored of it, you move on and start learning something else to build that into your repertoire.
Absolutely. And you know, that's really how and why I started using Lensbaby products, because I've been using Flash for 10 years. You know, and I'm just trying to do different things now. And like, I recently started using the Obscura lens from Lensbaby, and like, I'm trialing out things at the minute. It's a hard thing to nail to get it right, but I'm really trying to produce stuff that's just really different, that runs, as I said before, I'll have to run alongside what I normally do. But yeah, you have to try and progress and change things up a wee bit. And if it doesn't work, you can always just go back to, or go to something else, change it up.
Yep. Okay, well, Stephen, it's been fantastic hearing from you, and thank you for sharing all your images.
No problem at all. Thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
No worries. Thanks so much. All the best.